History remembers him as a god-king, but his own palace walls tell a far darker story. They claimed the royal chambers were filled with the scent of sacred incense, a fragrance meant to purify the air. But no aroma could hide the truth growing in those golden halls. In the deep quiet of Persepolis, a girl, barely 15, knelt as servants rubbed her skin with oils saved for royalty. They told her this was a divine blessing, the greatest honor a woman could know. She knew it was a lie. Her hands shook, not from the cold of the desert night, but from a fear she could not speak. Death would have been a mercy compared to her fate. The guards used titles of respect, but names held no power here. To the man she would meet, the man praised as a living god. She was just property. They say the eyes are windows to the soul. Hers were empty. Her shoulders bent under a weight no one could see. Her lips closed in silent protest. Her stare as old as if she had lived for 50 years. She had forgotten how to dream. Before we uncover the depths of this empire's decay, if you are interested in these trips into history's forgotten places, think about joining our group. Subscribe to Shadow of History and tap the bell so you will not miss our deep looks into the past. Your support helps us bring these important, unknown stories to light. And to understand why the King of Kings turned against his very own blood, we must follow the start of his empire and the roots of his madness. Xerxes came into the world in 519 BC. He was born into the heart of a kingdom covering 3 continents. The Persian Empire stretched from the Indus River Valley to the edges of Greece, from Egypt's burning sands to the Caucasus Mountains. 50 million people obeyed his father. Darius I ruled from palaces of stone and gold, where even the sunlight seemed to bow. When Xerxes was born, priests said he was chosen by Ahura Mazda, the god of light and wisdom. They did not raise a child, they built a god. At the royal school in Susa, Zoroastrian teachers repeated the same lessons every day. You are the holy made flesh. Your thoughts are sacred. Your word is law. They never taught humility or morals. They trained him in the belief of complete power. Every ceremony, every feast made it stronger. At sunrise, servants sang hymns to his greatness. At meals, nobles tasted his food to prove their loyalty. Even the way courtiers came near him, never turning their backs, never looking straight at him, told him he was more than human. When a boy is raised thinking he is a god, caring for others becomes a weakness. His mother, the daughter of Cyrus the Great, only made that wrong thinking worse. She had seen family wars tear homes apart, brothers murdering brothers, mothers plotting against sons. She whispered into Xerxes' ear, "Complete control is the only way to be safe." That lesson turned his heart to stone. He learned that love must be owned to be secure, that loyalty could never be believed unless it was forced through fear. By 20, when his father's death put the crown on his head, Xerxes was sure the empire was his own body, and its people were his blood. Lands and persons were the same. Both lived only to do his bidding. His early rule was soaked in war. He put down rebellions in Babylon with a cruelty that made his own leaders tremble. In Egypt, temples were burned, writers were killed, protesters shone on spikes along the Nile as a warning. The message was clear: fight him, and not even the gods could help you. But his final test came when he looked west, to Greece. For Xerxes, this attack was not just an army fight. It was a test of his godhood. He ordered a floating bridge of ships across the Hellespont, so his army, nearly 1 million men, if Persian writings are true, could walk across the sea. When a storm broke the bridge, Xerxes did the amazing. He told his soldiers to whip the water as penalty for going against him. He threw chains into the waves and called the ocean his slave. To his followers, this was a display of holy might. To others, it was madness. Then came the Battle of Salamis. The Persian ships were set on fire on the dark water. Months later, at Plataea, his foot soldiers were destroyed. For the first time, the man who called himself forever knew loss. And when a god finds out he can die, he does not become human. He becomes something much more unsafe. Xerxes returned to Persepolis in 479 BC. The victory marches stopped. The big parties ended. He no longer met foreign messengers. Court helpers whispered that his eyes had changed, always looking in the shadows, as if he expected betrayal at every corner. His orders became strange. He killed builders for picking the wrong shade for a tile, had generals peeled alive for questioning him. His empire, once led by plans, now bowed to his extreme suspicion. But the most scary change happened behind the 15-foot walls of the king's women's quarters. What had begun as a family custom, the royal harem, changed into a sick focus. Inside that walled puzzle lived 360 official wives and countless slaves taken from across the empire. Women from Egypt, Babylon, Lydia, India. Every month, new ones arrived in rich lines, picked not for family line, but for looks. The harem was a world of its own, a city inside a prison. Its marble baths shined under golden lamps, but its windows were covered. The smell of jasmine covered terror. No woman who entered ever left. Guarded men protected the doors. Even army chiefs were kept out. Only Xerxes walked freely, wrapped in silks and quiet. From this golden jail, daughters were born. Dozens, perhaps even hundreds, but they were spirits in the king's writings. They were not called princesses, their names were not cut into stone. They lived as ghosts, children of the god king, raised to know their bodies were his. Years later, one of the palace's head guards, Mithridates, would whisper to planners about what he had seen inside those walls. His story would end Xerxes' rule and stain his name forever. He told, "The fall began in 421 BC, 6 years after Greece shamed the empire. That year, the king crossed a limit so terrible that even his closest helpers were made quiet. At the center was a girl only 12 years old, raised in king's ways. She held herself with honor. Her eyes were the green of jewels, her hair black as night, her face oddly like her grandmother. And that similarity lit something in Xerxes that broke all reason. Palace workers would later name it a holy fixation. Others called it insanity. From that moment, the strongest man in the empire started dropping into a hole no priest could save. What he did next would make his worst enemies feel sadness for the Persian royal family. The meeting was set up as if for a heavenly rite. Every move, every breath inside the harem followed the strictness of a holy service. Helpers dressed in white moved without sound, their eyes stuck to the floor, repeating actions learned from ages of service. The girl was told she would join a divine ceremony, an act of space importance for the empire's balance. No one told her the truth. That night changed the king forever. The man who once led armies, who dreamed of joining the known world, never came out of that room. What came out was something colder, someone set to show that even as his power faded, his rule was still total. This was never a story of want. It was about control, the time where greatness and evil joined so fully that they ate everything around them. By 468 BC, Xerxes' rule had become a ghost of its old glory. The palace, once a sign of order and wealth, now beat with quiet horror. Inside its walls, a new system appeared, rigid, cruel, and carefully arranged. The young women of the harem were listed like treasure from beaten lands. Their names, ages, and body details filled scrolls kept in wood boxes. The most liked were kept for the king himself. The rest were traded like money, given to leaders, messengers, and noble families in exchange for loyalty. Childhood was missing in this place. There were only levels of slavery. The harem's guards, led by older guarded men, made a paperwork system matching the empire's army. They wrote down every meeting, kept schedules, gave out perfumes, creams, and medical herbs. Nothing was left unwritten. What happened behind those golden doors was treated with the same strictness Persia used to collect its taxes or send its troops. The mothers, stuck in next-door rooms, could only watch. Some fought back and were missing within days. Others broke under the pressure, losing their minds in silence. Most learned to live by acting not to see. Still, the daughters hurt most of all. They grew up in a world where obedience was holy and fear was mixed up for faith. There were no words in their language to say what was done to them. They lived in a kind of soul exile. Hiding inside themselves, their bodies told stories they could not speak. Bent backs, shaking hands, faces emptied of life. Some never talked again. Others laughed wildly as if madness was the only way out left. Xerxes watched this, rotting like a man looking at his own face in a broken mirror. His look had lost all heat. What he wanted was not fun, it was surrender. He had lost Greece, but within the walls of Persepolis he found new lands to conquer, the minds and spirits of those who could not fight him. Artapanus, leader of the king's guard, was among the few men who saw the empire's fall firsthand. His job needed his presence near the inner palace, though he could never step in. He later wrote that at night, Persepolis sounded like a church of despair. The mix of held-back crying, quiet prayers, and silences that hurt more than yells. The empire smelled of incense and rot, but it was not the death of enemies that bothered him. It was the death of a society rotting from its center. Complete power needs helpers, and Xerxes had many. The Persian upper class knew they ate under golden ceilings while pretending blindness. They explained their silence not with loyalty, but with staying alive. Many gained directly: new properties, no taxes, political marriages sealed by harem gifts. Wrongdoing had become the empire's second religion. Even the Zoroastrian high priests, the supposed keepers of good law, gave holy reasons for the king's wrongs. From the fire churches of Persepolis, they announced that the King of Kings ruled not just over people, but over all being. To doubt him, even within his own house, was to fight Ahura Mazda himself. Some churchmen went further, saying that the king's daughters were parts of the king's holy soul, holders of his divine light. To oppose his will, they said, was against God. The court doctors added their own layer of secret plans. They made plant medicines and creams meant to cover wounds, to dull pain, to take away visible signs of the rites. Papers were written in secret medical words so no outsider could understand what had been healed. Everything was done fast, quietly, orderly. But the heaviest betrayal came from inside. The older daughters, women who had already lived through the same experience, became helpers in getting the younger ones ready. They combed their hair, put on the oils, repeated the same calming lies once said to them. They did not act from hate, but from hopelessness. Joining in was life. Saying no was death. In that twisted truth, the family itself had changed into a tool of cruel control. The circle of harm fed on its own pain, keeping itself going through fear and emptiness. Mithridates,
The head guard of the harem, the same man who would later confess everything, kept mind records of every night, every ceremony, every disappearance. He said the king's hunger was not for joy, but for proof. Each act of cruelty reminded Xerxes that he still commanded fate, that he was still a god in a world that had dared to shame him. In his later confession, Mithridates recalled many young women marked or removed during those last years. Some vanished totally, others lived on in silence, spirits behind silk curtains. It was never about want, he said. It was a bottomless, endless need for power. By 466 BC, worry began moving through the top levels. Artapanus had seen enough. He gathered a group of rich men who had also seen the horrors. They called it a plan, but it was really self-protection. They feared not holy anger, but sickness. The idea that Xerxes' madness could reach their own houses, that their wives and daughters might be next. The plan they made was simple. During the New Year party, when the king went alone for his nightly habit of holy thought, they would hit. Artapanus and his men would slide through the inner door, kill him fast, and set the scene as holy self-killing. No talk of fairness, only stability. The empire had to live, even if truth did not. But Xerxes was no longer just wary. He was seeing things in his distrust. He saw betrayal in every face, trickery in every whisper. Servants vanished for smiling too much. Advisors were killed for speaking too softly. He had turned Persepolis into a puzzle of fear. In his final months, he would not leave the harem. Surrounded only by guarded men and scared women, he trusted no one else. The air inside became thick with incense and worry. Then came the night of August 4, 465 BC. Xerxes picked his youngest target yet, an 11-year-old girl who had not even become a woman. For weeks he had her watched, waiting for her body to grow, for the moment she would be ready for his ceremony. The palace was silent that evening, the kind of silence that comes before catastrophe. What happened next would finish an empire and cut Xerxes' name into history, not as a god, but as a lesson. That night, need finally beat care. Artapanus and his planners had waited for weeks, looking for the smallest break in the king's routine. When they learned that Xerxes would go into the harem alone, guarded only by guarded men who stayed outside the room, they knew it was their only chance. The guards, following holy rules, were stopped from entering once the holy rite started, which left the tunnels under the cooking rooms, the secret paths of the palace, unwatched. Artapanus led his men through those narrow halls, where the smell of cooked food mixed with the smell of old incense. They moved without noise, carrying knives instead of swords. There would be no second try. When they reached the king's private room, they saw what no man should ever see. Xerxes, the king of kings, the living god of Persia, was naked, sweat with sweat, holding down a small girl who cried without sound. His face was twisted, a horrible mask of madness and sick focus. Years of complete power had destroyed whatever was left of his humanity. His swollen body showed the signs of too much living, his hands dirty with the blood of his own child. For a moment, even war-trained soldiers stood still. The picture of the holy ruler had been swapped that of a beast. Artapanus acted first. He cut once, straight through the bones, piercing the king's heart. Xerxes turned, eyes wide, not with pain or fright, but with disbelief. He looked at his killer as if the world itself had turned against him. His final words, later told by Artapanus himself, were freezing. "But I am a god." The second knife sliced his neck. The third was extra, a last act of rage and release, that tore through his belly. The King of Kings dropped across the girl's small body, his kingly blood mixing with hers on the cold marble floor. The planners lifted his body, cleaned the wounds, and put him in his ceremony bed. They placed his hands as in deep thought, lit the holy fire, and told the court that the king had died quietly during his nightly talk with Ahura Mazda. The lie became the official truth before daylight. The empire could not take a shameful event. By morning, the throne had a new ruler, Artaxerxes I, son of Xerxes. His first order as king was to declare the harem closed for all time. In public, he said it was an act of honor for his father's holy memory. In private, he wanted to wipe out every mark of the bad dream that had rotted the heart of Persepolis.
The living women were quietly moved to other palaces across the empire. Many were quickly married to area nobles. Others were sent to temples to live as churchwomen. None remained in Persepolis. Their names never entered the king's records. No poet wrote for them. No history writer recorded their suffering. They became the unseen dead, left behind by history, remembered only by stone. The guarded men who had worked in the harem met their own quiet destruction. One by one, they were killed for made-up crimes, stealing, holy disrespect, secret plans. In truth, they were made quiet because they knew too much. Mithridates, the last living guard, was allowed to live just long enough to write a confession. His words, hidden for centuries, would come back long after Persia itself had turned to dust. Xerxes' body was kept according to Zoroastrian ways and buried in the king's grave at Naksh-Erostum, cut high into the rock wall. The tomb still stands, having writings that praise him as King of Kings, protector of the weak, loved by the divine light. But the walls say nothing of the daughters he destroyed, the lives wiped out to feed his pride. No talk of the horrors behind the golden curtains, no sign of the girls who died nameless within his palace. For 2,000 years, history remembered Xerxes for something else completely, his failed attack on Greece. Greek history writers like Herodotus made fun of his pride, retelling his defeat at Salamis and Plataea. Later, Persian writers played down his rule, calling it an unremarkable connection between the reigns of Darius and Artaxerxes. No one spoke of the harem, no one talked of the girls, and that silence may have been Xerxes' final win, to have done evils so huge that even time itself agreed to hide them. But stone does not forget. In 1931, French diggers working in the remains of Persepolis found something the official reports never dared to write. Under the marble floors of what had been the king's harem, they found an underground room filled with human bones, hundreds of small skeletons, most belonging to girls between 10 and 12 years old. Many showed signs of repeated harm and long captivity. Some were missing arms or legs. Others showed marks of planned cutting. Among the broken pieces, bits of jewelry and pieces of sweet-smelling pots still stayed, a terrible memory of beauty used to decorate pain. Science tests proved what Mithridates had confessed ages before, that the King of Kings not only enslaved and hurt the girls within his palace, but ended their lives when they no longer served his wants. The king's harem had not been a safe place. It was a killing place, hidden under silks and gold. Even today, when guests walk among the broken pieces of Persepolis and wonder at its big pillars and detailed stone art, few understand what lies under their feet. The stone carvings celebrate victory, order, and holy power. But under those same stones lies a mass burial, a quiet witness that behind the glory of empires often lies the pain of the powerless. This is the secret history of Xerxes I, the so-called King of Kings, not the one taught in classes full of fights and buildings, but the one written in the blood of his own children.
He was not just a king beaten by Greece, he was a man destroyed by his own dream of godhood. And this is how societies truly fall, not by attack, but by inside rotting, because when a kingdom is built on suffering, its power is a false vision. Sooner or later, it breaks under the weight of the pain it tried to hide. Today, in the quiet ruins of Persepolis, among the cracked stone art and fallen steps, the echoes of those lost girls still seem to whisper through the dust. Their voices say what no carving ever did, that the true inheritance of cruel rulers is not the buildings they raise, but the lives they wreck. And no matter how many centuries pass, cruelty never really disappears. It leaves marks in the stone, in the bones, and in the group memory of those willing to look under the surface. If this story upset you, share it, because quiet protects evil ones. And when we stop remembering the crimes of the past, we risk making new ones in the present. If you believe these lost voices should be heard, subscribe to Shadow of History. Here, we uncover the stories that official history tried to silence. The true legacy of cruel rulers is measured in quieted voices.